Good evening and welcome to the May 23rd business meeting of the Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so very much. And Brad, can you fill in for Aaron on the reading of the...
Brad, we read.
Oh, that's right. It's you two. I don't know why we had Aaron doing it. I'm
Had
sorry.
me scared there for a minute.
Fill in for Aaron on something else then. As is our custom, we typically have someone read our mission and vision statement. So if you would be so inclined, I'd appreciate it.
Richmond Community Schools guide students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Richmond Community Schools vision statement. Richmond Community Schools, a community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for life of choice, purpose, and service.
Thank you so very much. Then we go to our celebrations and reflections.
Okay, our celebration and reflections this evening. We're going to get an update from Dr. Reynolds regarding the career and college offerings that are taking place at the high school. And then also we're going to hear an update for Power Up. And I've asked Mr. Tidrow to give us the update in Power Up. So we've heard from the student groups, we've heard from the teachers that are involved with Next Gen. So what I've asked Rob to do tonight is to really talk through the technical side of it, usage, what we're seeing there between Wi-Fi and Canvas, and then also talk with us a little bit about damages and things that are happening there as well. So Dr. Reynolds, would you kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Just wanted to give a rundown this evening of some of the accolades and offerings for our Richmond Community School students. Of the nearly 300 seniors that we have at the high school, we have 136 of those, about 44% in the Career Center, whether that is in the co-op or professional career, biomed, Project Lead the Way, many of those programs, but they're in that program. So not only they're either career ready or college ready, whether they're heading down the college path. We have, addition to the 13 AP courses that we're offering, the 43 due credit courses, we have nearly 30 to 35% in line. We won't know for a few more weeks yet, but we have 30 to 35% in line for the honors diploma, so we're right around, if not just a little bit above the state average, ready to go. Interesting fact that Rusty shared with us at the career program that six of the 7 valedictorians were in the Career Center courses. 1,000 dual credits from the seniors this year earned through Ivy Tech and Vincennes, and of those 136 students, 40% of those kids are in line to earn a technical honors diploma. So again, demonstrating not only college but college career ready. Just a few accolades. We had a number of students, as you know, through the Business Professionals America qualify for nationals. We had 8 students qualify for nationals. HOSA, which we'll get to, we have 3 of them going to nationals, but 7 qualified. I'll be taking those to you in just a little bit. Skills USA, we of course had the first place in the EMS and first place in technical drafting. If that was a couple meetings ago, those neat kids talking about drawing a widget, I think, Brad, or something to that effect.
A widget.
A couple of other things coming through the Career Center. We have 12 students testing this Friday for the CNA test. We have 5 students that will be completing their cosmetology degree July 30th. 13 of the fire and rescue students will be earning their hazmat certification. 5 will be earning their fire and rescue, 1 and 2, and with some additional ones testing this week. Through the automotive program, we had 6 internships at Wetzel, 1 with Elstro Auto, 1 at New Holland, and 1 at John Deere. The radio TV, of course, they're producing those those programs, graduation, choir, or concerts, boys' games, and a lot of that was supplied through a grant. Biomed, one of the coolest things they did this year was watch an autopsy, a live autopsy, live streamed. It was pretty intense.
Mr. Hensley said he made it, what, 5 minutes? or
Mr.
something?
Hensley didn't make it very long. He took off. It was, and I struggled at times, but there was no smells, so I made it through I made it through most of it. But just another great opportunity through the biomedical. The machine tool, we had 2 at Belding, 1 at Belden, 1 at Stevens Wire, 1 at H&P Tool, and then 16 of those students in machine earned the OSHA certification. And then finally with EMT, we had 6 students earn 10 different certifications through the EMT program as well. The exciting part is that the students that are going on to college, we've had $2 million of scholarships that we've been told about, that $2 million worth of scholarships, and that does not include those that have been awarded the 21st Century Scholar Award. So lots of terrific things happening with our seniors, and lots of exciting things to look forward to the juniors and sophomores and freshmen.
Awesome.
Very good. Any questions for Beth at all?
Well, you need to mention that girls are now entering the EMT and firefighting program.
Absolutely.
Had our first girl who
Yeah.
finished the program. And
One trailblazer has opened the door for about 5 others. They said 5 or 6, so I thought that was good.
yeah, it's really good.
It's exciting.
All right, Rob.
All right. We had a successful year, we think, with the Power Up program for the one-to-one initiative. Looking at some of the technical things, one of the big questions always comes along is, breakages and damages to the devices when 5th graders through 12th graders are taking them home. Top 3 issues: broken screens, broken keyboards, and damage to our charging ports. It's interesting. It's where you plug in the charger. There's a piece in there that comes loose. Fortunately, that's covered under warranty, so that'll be a warranty fix through Dell. Percentages as far as breakages across the campus, we didn't see any highs and lows as far as buildings. The high school, we're seeing about 12% breakage. For tests and dentists, they're right at about 15 to 16%. No one is higher or lower. That's an interesting number. Hibbard comes in a little bit lower at 11%, maybe because they've had one-to-one now for the last 3, 4, 5 years with their initiatives. So, and that's kind of around the average, what we see around the state when we ask other IT professionals that's in our K-12 system. They see 11 to 24% is what I've heard in different areas, so our kids are right along that. So, and as we've reported before, if we see something that's a common problem, such as breaking the screen, a lot of time kids will place things in the keyboard and shut the screen and break the screen. They'll do videos or they'll do announcements to help kids remember not to do that. Usage of our Wi-Fi on campus, I looked at the last 3 years, just took May of 16, May of 17, May of 18, the same date. And in 2016, we were using about 100 gigabytes of data. Last year was about 700 gigabytes, so that went up about 6 times. And then now we're at 1.3, 1.25 terabytes, which is about double that. Wow. So we are really using that Wi-Fi across the campus. That's all buildings. Some Canvas numbers, which is our management system. If we look at intermediate school views, this is the views that students have, just looking at data, whether it's their home page or assignments. A year ago, this is really from the start of school till middle part of April, about 169,000 views. Pretty good when they weren't even one-to-one. This year, that time frame was 2 million, so about 11 times that. We wanted to take that view before our e-learning day. That way it doesn't look like it's just because of the e-learning day. That was actually before those days, so that you can see a significant increase there. Looking at the high school, we wanted to look at assignments. We looked at the 2016-17 semester 1 assignments, about 2,500 assignments given last year, which was pretty good with, even without devices one-to-one. They were able to use labs and take home. And then this year, semester 1, about 5 times that, 12,000 assignments, which is a pretty significant increase. We also looked at elementary. They're not one-to-one, but they're doing a lot of things, good things with Canvas. Fairview was the example we looked at. 16-17, about 100 assignments. This year, 1,300 assignments. So you can see that that has increased quite a bit, even for those areas that may not be the one-to-one, that they're still getting a lot of use of the Canvas. Process for this summer for our initiative. We're going to inventory all the laptops as we roll them in. That's part of the process. We want to make sure all the students get them in. If they don't, we want to see where they're at. We want to repair any laptops that need repaired. If a student was holding on to it these last few weeks, let's get that repaired. That's part of the roll-in process, is to identify those issues. We want to clean the laptops as best as possible, ensure the laptop bags that need replacing are replaced. We're also going to move the 8th graders' laptops as they matriculate from their intermediate up to the high school. We move them up to the high school so they're ready to have them when they go to high school. We take the seniors' laptops that have been used this year, and we're going to move those down to 5th grade and make sure they're ready for those incoming 5th graders. They'll be using those on years 2, 3, and 4 of the laptops. We're going to re-image all the laptops to make sure the systems are ready, and cleans off all the data that's on there, and just gives them a nice fresh image to start the year off with, and then prepare those laptops for deployment for the start of the next school year. So.
Very good. Questions for Ron?
I have a question. I've seen some of the notes when repairs have to be made on some of the laptops. It'll say, you know, whatever the problem is, and it'll say unintentional damage, but then there's a fee for the parent to pay. If it's unintentional damage, what does that mean? Does
That means
mean
someone didn't abuse it or throw it against the wall or
something that just happened to the
just
computer?
happened, right. You're still responsible for the damage. You know, if you're carrying it, maybe drop it, that's unintentional, but it was still damage to the laptop, so, yes.
On Wi-Fi, do we filter at different levels at the high school versus an elementary school?
No, all of our, we have 3 levels. One is students, they get filtered the most. Second is staff, teachers, faculty, adults. Third is IT staff. There's some IT staff that gets more access. They're still filtered, but we do not differentiate between a kindergartner or a senior. They're just students, so.
Can we?
It would take changing our entire system. We have not really looked into that, so.
I mean, I just hear constantly that references and things are blocked that should not be. And I think it seems like, you know, it might be nice for the high schoolers to have more access, maybe.
The process we have is if a teacher needs something unblocked, they go to their building administrator, and the administrator checks it out, makes sure it's appropriate, and then puts a request in, and we will we'll check it out ourselves and open it up. So, but we'll open it up for all students. So,
Is there anything with E-rate that would impact us at the different levels? Is it?
not really, as long as we filter the mature content, filter anything that is deemed harmful to students and harmful to the network. So sometimes it may work okay, but it may be harmful to our devices. Viruses, things can be downloaded easily and so forth, so.
But that's something we could look at. I mean, if there isn't a regulation at the federal level with.
To a student, if
Yeah.
they are being blocked, they're to go to the teacher.
Sure, yeah.
And then the teacher's to go to the administrator, and then the administrator goes to the IT department.
Right.
Process.
Right. And some things get blocked overnight, as you know, so, or filtered, so.
And as you said, sometimes, I mean, I've noticed some sites that seem like they shouldn't be blocked, but they're not healthy for the network, because there's all kinds of little bugs living
Right,
in.
yeah,
Sometimes
spam
it's
and so forth,
newspaper
so-
websites, honestly. I notice that a
Yeah,
lot.
there can be a lot of stuff there, so.
Well, the kids are doing a lot of different research, and I
Of
mean,
course.
to just kind of have a blanket block, I mean, it's difficult at
Yep,
times.
makes sense.
And the kid has multiple sources that are all blocked. They have to go home or use
Yeah.
another computer. But, that's all, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? All right. Thank
These
you, Rob.
numbers sound good. I'm excited about that. Okay, we've come to our first segment of public commentary, and I'm going to go ahead and read our protocol. The Board of School Trustees recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on corporation matters. Reference the Board of School Trustee Bylaws 0167.3. The board wants to ensure that the public feels welcome and that the concerns are answered in a timely, efficient manner. The following protocol has been established. This protocol applies to other public participation such as email, which is considered also public expression. The board has set aside two 30-minute periods for public commentary during business meetings. And persons who wish to address the board may reserve time on any board meeting agenda under public commentary, either by calling the superintendent's office by 4:30 p.m. of the business day preceding the meeting day, or by registering on the signature form at the event. The maximum time for individual speakers is 5 minutes per person. The board does expect personal decorum and factual information from the speaker. The president reserves the right to interrupt the speaker when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or if it interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Speakers voicing a complaint may be advised to complete a written form and submit it for review per policy 8130, public complaints and concerns. Comments recognizing the work of staff and students are always welcome. However, critical remarks concerning specific school personnel or students are to be made through the complaint process available. If the public comment reflects inaccurate or incomplete information, the superintendent may clarify the facts after the public comment section. If more investigation is needed, the comment will be clarified at the next meeting. If the issue is a personal issue and/or not of general interest to the public participant will receive a personal follow-up within the week. Public comments requiring no research, investigation, or review may receive response from the board and/or administration as appropriate. We say that to make sure people understand we're not ignoring, we just may not engage in conversation. And do we have folks signed up for
Yes,
tonight?
the first one's Elizabeth Moore.
Okay.
Oh, Kenny Turkelson.
This pertains to what's been going on at the Hibbert, and I did have discussion with Dr. Reynolds and Todd, so some of this might be, but my name's Kenny Turkelson, and I've been Alexis Barrow's stepdad for 8 years. We and others in the community are upset about the lack of information by the school about the inappropriate behavior that happened in a life skills classroom at Hibbert School by a student in the classroom, and worried that Alexis may have been exposed to this too, and I'll explain this in a second. We have been in contact with the superintendent's office and children's services and concerns and what we've heard. We've taken Alexis out of school for the rest of the year, and we'll be taking Alexis Friday to have her checked by a doctor. A couple of times she's notified, I've been notified that she's had a lot of pain at school when she's gone potty, and I have text messages to corroborate it, so I just want to make sure that she's okay. She will not return until you have the appropriate teachers, paraprofessionals, adequately educated, and are able to cover the amount of students in the classroom and to handle these special needs children in life skills program. And by Alexis's IEP, in my opinion, there has not been enough consistency in her routine. Paras are moved around during the day. She needs consistent and regimented daily structure. And in the past, there's not been enough help in the class adequate to handle her one-on-one needs, and I've seen that. But what brought us to it is that we started putting things together while Alexis had been acting out in the classroom and at home the way she has this last month. taking off her clothes in school, pulling her pants down in front of students, running out of the classroom to hide in the bathroom, and wetting her pants nearly every day for almost 2 months. These things are extremely out of Alexis's normal behavior patterns. I have text messages to back this up. Additionally, I've also received either a text message or phone calls from the teacher to help assist the teacher with Alexis's behavior almost every day since April. And frankly, I shouldn't have to be involved in her school routine because that's not in her IEP. This is what concerned me. She had started the last couple of weeks starting to play with her dolls in a very sexual way, and I had been going through her tablet to clean out files. Came upon some videos that she made in her bedroom with her tablet that looks just like pornography with the dolls and with all the sound effects and all. I can only speculate what triggered this, but we have a pretty good idea. It's been confirmed that there was an incident of inappropriate behavior by a student in the classroom. We are going to put Alexis into counseling. Children like Alexis are fragile and influenced by others, and we expect hopefully to be provided with the support to meet Alexis's emotional needs through the school-based counseling at no cost. To allow such things to happen in the classroom and then to allow the child that committed these inappropriate acts and to stay in the classroom and stay in the school system, this child definitely needs more help than the school can provide. And I feel this child in question has tried to or has been somehow in physical contact with Alexis because of what I mentioned about all of that other stuff there. And you moved one of the students out of the class because he was terrified to go back. Then yesterday I was offered by the principal to move Alexis to another class, but it doesn't rectify the situation and the problem at hand. So, sorry. Alexis has never acted this way, and no way has ever seen anything like this anywhere, not on TV, not any of your movies. I monitor everything she watches, so in my opinion, there's really no explanation except something that might have happened at school. This whole ordeal has been very disrupting to our community. You as a school board members now have become aware of this whole situation that's transpired over these last months, and hopefully you will have a plan to rectify this problem before it goes any further. If that means clean house, then so be it. But if it means the teachers need to be re-educated to meet these needs of these children, then let it be so. In my opinion, the teachers and paraprofessionals and any other administrative officials should be reprimanded and let go for their lack of resolving this terrible situation. I hope this was just a lack of information to us because of disclosures, but we should have been informed. And I had a meeting with Dr. Reynolds, like I say, and things weren't disclosed, but things were explained. There is certain disclosure that needs to be looked upon, and so they couldn't just tell us all of the stuff that was going on. And that's why I thought, wow, this must be a big cover-up or something, but now I realize that it was just not being able to furnish the information, really not being this, very first time that anything's like happened like this. So I can understand a little bit. So you received a text message with an email with what I had originally done, and I toned it down because I did learn a little bit more about it. And I do know that the school system is providing things and getting things and the ball rolling on it. So I feel, let's see if it happens. It says it happens, but let's see if it happens. And if it does happen, that will be a plus for the students and their safety. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Moore. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner at Reed Health and Kenny's wife and Alexis's mom. I have 4 wonderful children. Alexis is my youngest, and she has Down syndrome. She's been through much in her 12 years, heart surgery, a number of health issues, celiac disease, and she was also recently diagnosed with Lyme disease. We moved here almost 4 years ago. We were anticipating, from Massachusetts, we were anticipating this move would be difficult for Alexis, as she was very attached to her teachers in Massachusetts, and they to her. There was an adjustment period, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I'd anticipated. Her teachers at Crestdale were excellent, every single one of them. As hard as it would be to transition to a new home and school, her transition to Hibbard was exponentially more difficult. As a nurse practitioner, when I meet a new patient for the first time, I try to learn as much about them as I possibly can before our first appointment, because I understand the importance of building rapport. Months into the school year, Alexis's teacher was still quite clueless about Alexis's likes and dislikes. It seemed that no time was spent by her teacher in preparation for these students, and not just Alexis. They didn't even know that there was another student who used a tablet to communicate, and that was clearly written in his IEP, which tells me that the students' IEPs were not being read, let alone followed. This is completely unacceptable. These children are special, as every person is, unique and special. If you're not seeing these children as special and not just seeing the needs or the tasks to be done, you don't belong in this field. I understand there can be extenuating circumstances, but these events that occurred were 100% preventable. There's just no excuse. My 17-year-old daughter was molested by her cousin at a young age, and she goes through that hell on a daily basis. It breaks my heart that any child has to go through this or be exposed to this. And my heart goes out to all those kids that were affected by the situation. And Alexis is pretty resilient, and she doesn't let a lot bother her, but I worry about a lot of the other kids, and especially one in particular. But it just knowing how this can affect them the rest of their lives. So I just really hope that this will be taken seriously. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Debra Martin.
Hi, my name's Debra Martin. It's hard for me to talk about this. I've been raising my grandson and adopted him. I've been raising him since he was 2. I adopted him at 4 to give him a good life. He was doing great. This year, he was accepted at Hibbard at the early college. So I took him out of Northeastern. He had been at Northeastern since 2nd grade on up. No behavioral problems. Grades, dean's list every month, every grade semester. And he goes, when he couldn't grasp and keep up at Hibbard, instead of sending him back to Northeastern like I should have, he had a couple friends at Dennis, and Dennis was in our district. So I sent him to Dennis. That has been since January, after the Christmas break. 2 weeks from the time that he started at Dennis, the bullying started. I have gone and talked to the teachers, gone and talked to the principals, been very involved, gone to the school and stayed for days, and then in his classroom, following him around. He has gotten hit, and he's at the point. It finally came to a head for me. May 6th, he was walking home from school, not even a block from the school. There was a planned fight between 2 other people, and he didn't want anything to do with it. And so the buses were being delayed, so he decided to walk home. What that got him was being beat up by one child while others watched. I'd take him to the hospital. I have pictures, so I'll have to send it to the board because I guess I can't show them and stuff. But this kid used to go to Dennis, and I found out afterwards, used to go to Dennis, goes to Baxter now, and has siblings that go to Dennis. And that. I have gone over and over about this bullying, and nothing's been done. I asked for an incident that happened before and stuff, before that. I mean, these kids were coming to my home. Now, if they couldn't get them at school, I was finding them in my front yard, near my front yard, waiting for him to come get from the bus, behind my garage, in my alleyway, and stuff. I've had the police 3 times to 4 times, and that, had to call the police and stuff. Still nothing done. Nothing done. I report this to the school. I tell them what's going on. I ask. One police officer said to me, she said, ask the school for a resolution meeting with the other parents. I asked for that. I got told no by the principal and the assistant principal. We don't do that. Well, maybe if you had, maybe these other parents don't know what their kids are doing. And this could have been stopped. And it was the same kids over and over and over again. Now, this boy, his confidence is gone. As of May 6th, he didn't want to go back to school. I made him. I called I came here and saw twice the superintendent. Now, supposedly, this kid that beat my child, and I'm going to tell you the report from the hospital. I had to watch him for 3 to 5 days. The kid beat him so hard, right here, he could have killed him. And it stopped his back. He had bruised ribs, front and back. Now, does a kid have to die in order for something to be done? Now, I've seen in the news over and over again about how bullying is not being, the schools are not reporting bullying. One of the questions that my family wants to know is, how much bullying have you had reported to you and you've reported?
We've reached our time limit, ma'am.
Thank you.
Shannon Kraft.
Good evening. I was at the last board meeting but wasn't able to speak. I was concerned about the boundary lines. My son, who is now in 5th grade going into 6th grade, has attended Westview all 5 years of his education. He did exceptionally well. He's in the early college program. He's placed second in his school science fair. He was able to take his project to Ball State. I have a daughter who's actually 5 today. She is supposed to be going to Westview. Unfortunately, we were redistricted to Fairview. With that being said, my daughter has been to every Westview function since she was born, since he was in the 1st grade. She knows that school. Ever since she could walk, because this will be my school when I get older. Yes, it will. We drive past there. She knows the school. She's been to pickups. She's been to drop-offs. The teachers know her. I have a relationship with the teachers, even the principal. She knows my child. When I called and spoke with her a week ago, she knows my child. She knows his history. we have that relationship formed. The only reason I sent my child to public school was because I knew 2 teachers at Westview, and I bought a house before my children were born in that school district. I live right outside this back door. I'm 4 houses from the boundary line. Unfortunately, I was told there will be no waivers, that I couldn't get my child to the school that I wanted my child to attend. I understand overpopulation. I totally get it. I don't want my child to be in a classroom with 30 other children and not be able to learn. But I'm not requiring transportation. I will take my child to school. My husband works in Indianapolis. It is extremely difficult for him dropping one child off at Dennis, then we're gonna have to rebound, go to Fairview, and then we're gonna have to go back. He will be right on 40 where he needs to go. I work in Ohio, so it's completely out of my way. I have to leave work earlier, or leave for work earlier than he does, so I can't drop her off. Historically, the bus stop has been on Southwest D and Southwest 2nd. That is now Westview's district, so I don't know if I'm gonna have to send my child to another school district to get on the bus if I do decide to have her take the bus, which won't happen because the bus runs far too early in the morning. I don't want my child on the bus at 6:50 in the morning to spend the entire day. If we do have to send her to Fairview, she will then have to be bused from Fairview to Charles to the Y Care, because no family members are gonna be able to pick her up. My mom works 2 blocks away from Westview. She gets off work at the exact same time school gets out. She gets off work 10 minutes before school gets out, and she can go pick her up from school. My husband has the ease of drop off, since he will be going down 40 to Indianapolis. I know that some of the Charlesville things were redone, and I'm just wondering where the resolution is for the Westview students. I didn't see very many people advocating for Westview, and I just wanted to make my thoughts and feelings on the school known. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Tiffany Swollen.
I currently have 2 children in the Richmond Community Schools. Out of my 6, I've moved most of my others. I have a son in special needs, Jordan Swollen. You know, Jordan doesn't communicate well. In fact, some of the people that know him, I mean, he uses the tablet and stuff to talk. I think I have a hard time finding out, you know, through the grapevine of what all was going on. Not being informed, you feel helpless as a parent. You know, I'm a product of being sexually molested myself, and to have my son exposed to that, the anxiety level of even taking my son back to that school when he just went out of my sight, and I seen that room door open, knowing the same people are still there, you have no idea what that's like. And I'm at the point I want to know what's really being done to keep him safe, or if I need to take further steps to keep him safe. But I also have another child that is in the Richmond High School that I equally have concerns about. He recently got in trouble for making a knife at school in the shop class. 45 minutes, a teacher didn't notice he was making a knife, but apparently it's the thing in shop class, as long as somebody doesn't tell on you. And I mean, I didn't first leave him right off, but his friend came and stood at my gate, not knowing what conversations were had because my son hadn't seen him since, and was telling me about all the knives that are made in shop class. I asked him what they do with them later, and it's that they flatten them down or they make them into something else. But now my son's facing a B charge because another student said, oh yeah, he's making a knife. The teacher told my son the only reason he had to tell was because another student told on him. My son should have been told in the beginning of that class, hey, we don't do this in this class. This is not acceptable in this class. I just want to know where all this supervision is of Richmond Community Schools teachers. I mean, I made a choice to leave my son in Richmond Community Schools, my oldest son. I didn't have a choice with my special needs son. I mean, I can drive him to Northeastern. I may have to look into that if I don't see you guys making better decisions for our children's safety. I mean, I've watched, there's some big kids in that special needs class even. And, you know, I seen one boy, and I mean, autistic children can get angry, and I know that. I don't know if that's what he has, but he's a big boy, and I watched him get really angry. And he jumps up, and like, I grabbed my son, and they did rush all the kids out. But that's still a concern. I mean, it wasn't the teacher's fault, but that kid was like really big to be in there with a bunch of little kids. I just want to know what's gonna be done to better ensure our kids' safety. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all. We are now to our consent agenda.
Okay, for your consideration this evening, we bring to you 4.01, the approval of minutes, 4.02, human resources, including the addendum at your seat tonight, 4.03, accounts payable, and 4.04, the monthly financial report.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent items as presented?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Move forward to our action items. First is donations.
Okay, our first action item this evening, I'm going to ask Mrs. Scalf to speak to our donations tonight.
Good evening. Tonight we have a lot of donations. It's the season in which a number of our buildings have special events planned, and often we have donors who help make those things happen. It is also the time of year in which we have scholarships at the high school offered, and the donors for our scholarships are listed on tonight's donations. I do ask that you take a look at our postings on board docs on the RCS website for a full list of all of our donors. I will briefly mention the totals for each section of donors tonight, but we are very grateful for each and every one, and I do ask that you take a look at those when you have the time. Tonight we thank numerous donors for donations for the 4th grade day trip to Wilderness Ridge at Charles Elementary. Total donations were $1,940. Several books were donated to the Dennis Library in a value of $543.39. There was a donation for field trip transportation costs at Hibbard for $200. A donation of teacher appreciation items, $20.98. Another donation for Teacher Appreciation Week at Hibbard of $250 in value, and then also donations totaling $124 for Teacher Appreciation Week as well at Hibbard. We had numerous donations for the Shamrock 5K, 10K run hosted by our high school BPA organization. Those donations totaled $4,410. They could not do that event without you, and we thank you for that. The students at the high school who will be attending the National Leadership Conference received donations of $295. The RHS speech team received donations toward their trip to national competition in the amount of $2,188. High school scholarship donations totaled $9,125 this year. The RHS cheerleaders received $1,300 in donations. The RHS baseball team received $500 in donations. The RHS golf team received donations of $30, and a donation was made in memory of Robert Ray for $20. Total donations this month are $20,926.37. I ask that the board approve these donations.
Do I have a motion to approve the donations as presented? Motion by Dixie Robinson, second. Second by Jeff Slifer. Any comments or questions other than a hearty thank you? Very generous and very appreciated. All those in favor of accepting these signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, our next action item is 5.02, the food services supplies bid recommendation. I'm going to ask Mr. Tidrow to speak to this, please.
Okay, thank you. The following item is submitted for your consideration and for approval. Food service supply bids were received on April 12th, 2018. Notice to bidders was published in the Palladium item on March 2nd, 2018 and March 9th, 2018. Proof of publication is on file in the business office. All bids and bid documents are also on file. These products will be purchased from food service monies for the one-year period of July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. Enclosed, please find the following documents. The recommendations and the tabulation sheets were included. Recommendation, I recommend that the food service supply bids be approved as submitted. Thank you for your consideration, and I would like to commend Mrs. Maggie LaRue and Mrs. Lisa Falk for reviewing all the bid packets as enclosed.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept food service bid supplies as recommended?
Also make the motion.
Motion by Jeff Slifer. I have a second. Second by Dixie Robinson. Any comments or questions about that? Okay.
Madam President,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
the motion should, I think it's intended to, but the minutes should reflect that the motion also, that the recommendation is also accompanied by the notations that explain why in a particular instance either a bid wasn't accepted, it was apparent low, or it wasn't responsive. So all that's part and parcel of the recommendation.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So the bid recommendation with the added information. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next is mental health services.
I'm going to ask Dr. Reynolds if he would speak to our mental health services recommendation.
Great, thank you, Mr. Terrell. This evening, I'm asking the board to approve the request to advertise and accept proposals for mental health services as attached. We are requesting RFPs for the mental health services that will be engaged with the Richmond Community Schools students. The target group will be students that are identified through response to intervention process and are in need of social skill and personal goal setting growth opportunities. The mental health professionals will provide a continuum of services, including universal precautions, early intervention, and intense intervention. It is preferred that the mental health workers hold the licensed social work LCSW or a Masters of Social Work MSW designation. Again, I ask for approval tonight for the request to advertise and accept proposals for mental health services. We would like to accept proposals on June 12th, 2018 at 9 a.m.
Okay, Suzanne had to step away for a moment. Any questions or comments?
I have a question. Is this the same thing that Centerstone does in the schools?
Yeah, Centerstone currently has the contract at this time.
Okay. So all the schools should have that special support, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
You just had questions?
Okay, we had a motion?
We're no motions yet.
Okay. All right. Any other?
I put the motion on the floor that we put out the request for the RFP.
Thank you so very much.
Second that.
Thank you. Sorry, we had kids coming from Kings Island, had to deal with it.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the request to advertise and accept proposals for mental health services signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, overnight field trip for AP Biology, and I thought we already did this one. Maybe it's because
Different one.
I've talked about it with
Yeah.
you a couple times.
Dr. Reynolds, if you want to take the next two individually, but
Absolutely. The first one, we have talked about this one. They just recently attended the trip. We
Okay.
had to amend it because they, I think it was snowing, the one,
Oh,
the
okay.
first week
I
that they
thought
were
it sounded
scheduled to go in
familiar.
April, and they
Okay.
rescheduled it. It wasn't snowing, but it was cold, but they toughed it out.
I thought it sounded familiar.
Yeah. So this is an overnight field trip by Mr. Hilbert and Mr. Bailey for AP Biology and Environmental Science classes to go to McCormick's Creek Park. That's not the right title. Yeah, McCormick's Creek State Park for AP classes, AP Biology and AP Environmental classes. It's a terrific trip. lots of hands-on learning, and it's just well in advance. I think they want to start fundraising so they can get that going. So it is for April 13th through the 15th of 2019.
Very good. So do I have a motion to approve the overnight field trip for AP Biology and AP Environmental Science?
I'll put the motion on the table.
And
Thank
I'll
you so very much.
And I'll second it.
Thank you. Any other questions? It sounds like a lot of fun. Some of the recent field trips really
Farmers
sounded.
Creek State Park has been around for a long time.
It is.
I've never been. So, all those in favor of approving the overnight field trip signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And then we have overnight HOSA Nationals.
Yes, Nationals. We discussed this. We knew this was coming. We hoped it was coming. But we do have 3 students that are going to participate. I think we had 7 or 8, I believe I read, that qualify, but 3 are going to participate just due to scheduling. It is June 27th through June 30th. It is in Dallas, Texas. They'll complete their, they have their competition ceremony will be held there at the hotel. So I'm asking for approval for the 3 HOSA students to travel to Nationals to Dallas, Texas.
I move that we approve the overnight field trip for HOSA.
Have a second?
I'll second.
My Brad? I'm pretty sure you said Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas.
Sure, Dallas in June is steep.
Yeah.
All those in
That'd be hot.
favor, all those in favor of the overnight field trip for HOSA Nationals signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We are to our board reports and old business.
We do not have anything on the agenda.
I got some stuff that I'd like to
Okay.
discuss. And part of it is just, since there's new board members as well, in the past, the speakers that we had last week, or last board meeting, did a fine job. I mean, they were, but in the past, we've always, did the board not send notification to those speakers in the past? I mean, did we acknowledge
As
them
far
in
as
any
a
way?
response to them,
Yeah.
I don't know if the board has in the past. We did, as the administrative team, we contacted them.
Because it'd be nice to, I think before, the board used to.
Usually it was when there was someone who was celebrated. There was usually another notification, like a note sent on behalf of the board from one of the officers, but.
Because I think it's important for even the speakers that we had tonight, to acknowledge, I mean, to acknowledge it. As also the follow-up question to that was, I received an email, and I think it was addressed to the entire board, about a boundary issue.
Yes.
Or a concern. Did we respond? I guess I would just like to know, because once I get an email personally, I feel like I have a responsibility to answer it. So I don't want to sit here and assume that someone is answering it. So if it is being answered or responded to, I'd like to see a reply. I mean, I actually answered, or I sent a response back to the parent, but yeah, it was,
Yeah,
I just, it's,
I
I know,
understand.
I just want to make sure that,
So, let's talk about that a little bit, because I understand that, because I feel the same way. I feel like it's not good for no one to respond, but I also feel like it's not good for 7 people to respond, because we each individually are not the board.
right?
So I guess that's where we probably need to talk about that. And if we so choose to do that and not defer to the administration on that, then we probably need to designate, I would assume the president to, send a response and then copy the rest of you so that you know that at least that person has been
Or,
responded to.
and I think I would be okay with that, although at any given time, if I feel like I need to respond as an individual board member, I will, but the parent will know, or the person will know it's an individual board member. I mean, I don't want someone speaking for me, and I'm not speaking for the board. But I do want to make sure that we're showing these individuals the respect.
I do appreciate that.
So.
There's a little bit of risk in each of us responding individually because,
I
as
understand that.
everyone understands, each individual board member really does not have,
Well,
we're
which
powerful
actually,
as a group.
which is actually part of the reason why, there's two reasons why I'm bringing up that specific email. Is because my response was nothing other than follow the chain of command.
Which is absolutely the right response.
I said, what you should do is you should, contact the building principal. I said, there's board policy in place for these types of situations, and I referenced 4120. And what was interesting is I got a response back that had already taken place, and they were taking no applications or no considerations. So the email I got back basically said that we've suspended board policy 4120, with the associated administrative guidelines. So I was a little confused that, our whole job is board policy. So if we didn't approve as a board to suspend board policy, we approved to adjust the boundaries as see fit from the administrators. But it shouldn't stop the process of people filing.
And it hasn't.
But I was told that they couldn't.
From the person or
From the
from an
person, yeah.
administrator?
So and everybody who spoke last week was contacted and taken through the process. I even met with a couple individuals yesterday regarding, as they go up the chain of succession with it, the final comes to me, and so at that point in time, so we're still continuing to do that. There hasn't been any suspension of any board policy.
Okay, well, that's important for me because
The
I think.
practice is still in place. and
Because I
we're
think if
following
we
exactly
have the
what's there.
policies there and we have the targets and we have
Absolutely.
the caps, as I've read those and been through those and bled through those for many years now, if we're sitting at a capacity in a building at 84% or 85%, I can understand by policy and administrative guidelines that we can't provide them an immediate response of yes, you can be accepted or as a transfer or not. There's a timing and there's a process and that whole, I just need to make sure, because I would have kind of a concern that when that, and I don't remember the dates in my head because it's been a little while since I read let's just say June or July, whatever it was. If a final response is supposed to go back to the person that requested the transfer, and if our request this year is we are not accepting any transfers for students to go into another, then that also, in my opinion, would limit us accepting any students coming in from another city or from another corporation or, so that's a slippery slope in my opinion.
So there's two different issues there. One is the issue that in 2015, the board decided not to stop all the transfers that were going on. And a lot of that was driven by transportation cost. And so we have stuck very tightly to that and continue to do that. The issue was somebody coming in from another district to our district is restricted by state guidelines and mandates as well. So if you accept one transfer, you have to accept all transfers unless there's a capacity issue within that building. So there are limitations that go along with that supersede
board policy?
What we can and can't do as far as our practice goes with transfers with students.
Well, I guess as an individual board member, let me get my wording correct. It seems a little foggy to me, so I guess I just want to make sure that we have clarity in this process, because I understand, I still to this day don't know how many families we impacted by adjusting the boundaries. I don't know if it's 50, I don't know if it's 5,000. I know it's not 5,000.
I guarantee it's not 5,000.
But I think for us to remove the processes that we have in place.
Which we haven't.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I just want to make sure that I understand what our board policy and how that administrative guideline works. Because part of the problem with the policy is we make our policies so general to give flexibilities to the administrators. So I just want to make sure that it's being carried out in the way that I intended the policy that as I voted for it. Okay.
Well, and then and we can work on that. The other part of that I struggle with a bit is that we don't register until, now that doesn't mean we aren't getting people in, but registration doesn't happen until July. So if you accept too many transfers before that.
Well,
then
and I understand that,
then-
and that's why I'm saying, that's why I'm not saying that just because somebody requested a transfer today, that they should be
Yeah.
allotted that position.
So-
But if they go through
okay.
that process and that building's at an 88% or 90% capacity come
Okay.
August 1,
Okay, so
then
let's
I
work on.
surely feel that someone that's not in our system, or someone in our system would have more right than someone that's not
So
in our
as a
system.
board, let's work on making sure we understand
So,
that policy.
and then if we need to define that and spell that out in board policy, then I'd be willing to take that step.
And I think what we'd have to do, and Ron can help us with that, is get a legal definition of what capacity is from the state. So in other words, as you accept one student, you have to accept all unless a building is at capacity. What is that capacity?
Well, then you would have to also answer that question, would you have to accept all from only within the district or outside of the district?
Outside is what the
Yeah,
state
so
says.
we need to do a little bit of homework on that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But as it is written right now, we have caps and target numbers established by class.
But I also want to make sure that
So-
we don't have a ton of students coming from outside the district either. So where we have capacity issues, so.
Right.
It's not a major issue right now.
And I appreciate that, and I hope you appreciate what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
But
Well, and
because we do have caps and targets.
Right. But I think it's important for all of you to know that we are still following through with the transfer request, just like we do in our admin guidelines and the procedures that are in place there. And we review each and every one of those. Chuck meets with them first or contacts them by phone first. And then if they want to appeal the decision from there, then it comes to my desk.
And that's all I'm asking, is that process is complete, so.
I'd like to know, I guess in August, I'd like to know the rate of success that either we accept or don't accept transfers.
The rate of?
So if we've had 25 transfers, we're 5 accepted.
Okay.
If after school starts, if we could have that.
Within the district?
Yes.
Okay. And I can tell you that within the district, we're staying really strong with that it's either has to be a medical or a legal issue before we will allow those transfers.
And,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to go back to what Jeff said about speakers who come for public commentary or for celebration or whatever it is. Past practice, and I think it's in board policy because I was looking it all up one time. And I know in the past that board presidents have been the spokesperson for the board, and they answer the emails, if there is an email, on behalf of the board. And then depending on public commentary, what the situation is, I've always been adamant that I certainly think the people who come should have an answer within a reasonable amount of time. I mean, like within a week, that they be contacted.
And that is actually in the practice that was written.
That's.
I have not been doing it. The administration has
Okay.
been, but I do not object. In fact, I actually like the idea that while it wouldn't be necessarily a response, just an acknowledgement of thanks.
Well, I remember
for
several
attending.
instances where you sent out a draft to have people put their input into it, and I remember that.
I think the other thing, in respect of Suzanne's time as well, that could simply be a contact to say, expect further information to follow
Absolutely.
from an administrator, so that,
Well, can we add one other step to that then, and just make sure that there's a notation to the other board members of what the response was?
Absolutely.
And when it
That's
was?
no problem at all.
Because, you know, as a,
Copied in it, yeah.
Yeah, so we know that it's happened.
so that we know
Absolutely.
that it's
That's no
happened.
problem at all.
I mean,
I am
I don't
in
have any
favor of that.
problem in the board president or representative speaking and responding on behalf of the board. I mean, but every board member also has to realize they have the right as an individual to talk, but just be aware that they're not talking
You
for the
can't make,
board.
that's the issue, yeah.
Right,
Well,
there's two
and I-
different issues there.
And I don't like to sit and wonder, I wonder if those people heard anything. So just as long as, you know, you can send us something that
Perfect.
was,
I mean, I really enjoy.
concerns were addressed.
Especially the, you know, we've been shown a lot of respect in the last couple of weeks and the way they've addressed us, so.
Agreed. Very good.
I got a couple more items unless somebody wants to go next.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
A month ago, I had sent an email to the board, because, you know, we do 99% of our communication via email. Kind of talking about, you know, things that we need to do as we move, and I'm not going to take the time and read the email, but go back and look on Sunday, April 22nd at 10:36 p.m. You know, part of the process that I talked about, things that we need to consider about what's coming up over the next 12 months, over the next 3 years. And I've mentioned many times about, you know, a building committee, if that's a possibility or a need, a finance committee, educational committee, any additional committee, any thought processes and stuff. And part of the reason why I'm bringing it up is I was a little bothered, and I'll repeat it again. I was bothered by the process and the timing of which we had to make the decision on the boundaries. We had 6 days. No public commentary, no public discussion. So I've heard for the last 3 or 4 months that we got to make these decisions. Time is running out on a bond and funding, this and this, and we've wasted the last 2 board meetings because we've had zero. I mean, our work session 2 weeks ago was about our meeting with the financial managers, but we've had no communication in the last month about what we need to do to be prepared. Again, I think this should be driven by the board and direction provided to the administrative cabinet, not the other way around and us having no time to think. I want time to react. I want time to think. I want time to ask questions. I don't, and I'm saying it now, so when the next time the vote comes up and we have no time, you'll understand why I won't be happy. So I've done what I can do as an individual board member. I don't know that I got a single response on this email. I've talked about it multiple times in this section of the board meeting. And I've got a few shakes of the heads and a few comments that Jeff will make you feel good and say yes, but yet nothing's happened. So I challenge the board, I challenge us we need to step up, be involved. We need to lead this and not be a follower. So. And I won't even make you respond.
As a new board member, Jeff, that I am, I didn't respond to that because I wasn't really sure where I would fit in that picture. I wasn't really sure what my role is. You know, I'm willing to work and do whatever on an individual committee, but I just wasn't sure what my role is. I was waiting to see what other people were going to say, whether that's right or wrong. Because I do want to work, and I do agree with you 100%, but I just didn't know where I would fit in that.
Well, and I'm not trying to attack each individual board member tonight.
I know that.
Well, I'm sorry.
And if you want to think about it, and that's fine.
Well, one of our very next steps is our training session, and I felt like that is our springboard to some of these conversations, is our training session that's coming up in June regarding the financial tools available to us. And so I don't disagree with you, but I feel like that's our next step.
Well, but to me, I think we should be talking about what needs to be done, our 3-year plan, how we're going to organize it, who we want to hire to do it, you know. I mean, all of those processes, if they're not happening now, we're already behind. We might as well just say no on voting for the bond because we've wasted the time.
I guess I'm at a loss because the board agreed upon that the next board meeting, that June 13th date, as being that come together, have that plan figured out, have all of that together. So I'm at a loss when you're saying we should be doing more right now, because from what I understood
finances.
was that's when it was going to be, was at that June 13th
I took that
meeting.
strictly from finances.
But I think all of that goes together though in that plan.
Yeah.
as we roll it out.
As long as we have the time that we need, then.
And that,
Of course.
as we mentioned when we set that date as being that work session, the intention will be that you'll have that a week in advance to review that information before we walk into that meeting as well.
Have what, a week in advance?
The information that we'll be covering during that
In the-
meeting.
Oh,
the training, in the
bond,
training.
on the financing piece of it.
Well, the whole thing, yeah. So looking at projects, looking at all of that, to have that information ready for you so that you have plenty of time to review it. So when you come into that meeting, and we're going through the training with the people who we've already hired, that they will then, you guys will have that information to be able to ask questions.
So you're,
And being
maybe
able
that's
to
part of what I'm
direct.
talking about. I mean, if you're already talking about the projects, I mean, if you're saying we're
Well,
gonna
some of
have
those
it-
are
I'm
not a
just saying
mystery.
very generally, I am just very generally as we're looking at what those projects need to be, what the groups of the projects need to be.
And maybe out of that, we can decide if we need to have committees or something to
Well,
set
and-
up to do that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, and that's one of the things, they've got some recommendations with being that this is what they do on a regular basis and suggestions for the board that I think we need to discuss then in that private session as to how we can best accomplish that.
Okay.
Well, I just know well, I should say I just feel like that we're sitting there with our tires spinning in spot and we're not doing anything, and
So we're gonna wanna make the best of this training session and where we are getting the most information.
okay, so, and I guess
I think the point is, though, we should know what's coming down the pike more than a week in advance.
But we do, I mean, we've had lists of projects from
I don't
Fannie
know
and-
again.
you don't
I
know from
what-
Fannie and Howie?
I don't know if, obviously, there's some sort of plan that's been pieced together to borrow a smaller amount of the money.
If I might just speak to the plan that you are all referring to, each year you approve a capital projects plan that is for 3 full years. There are no surprises here. When we talk about this at the budget workshop, there is nothing that you are not going to already know about based on the fact that every budget season we approve future projects that are going to occur. We're going to talk about all of the forms that it takes now to make that happen. We're also going to talk about what's different, because there are a lot of changes coming that I just learned about last week that even I didn't know were coming. So I don't think that we're that far off the same page in anything being unknown, because each year that plan is talked about and approved by the board. That's where we're going to start. The Fanning and Howie projects are no surprise to anyone. They actually detailed out a whole lot more than even what our capital projects plan has in it. So the stuff we're going to talk about really is not going to shock anybody. It's not going to be any kind of surprise. It's not going to be anything that you haven't already heard about. It's just going to be looking at what we know that we need to look at and start assessing what that possibility is when we look at the placement of funds and how that's going to work with the budget, with the bonding, with any kind of possibility of debt. We're not going to make any decisions that night. We're just going to start talking, because we have to start making decisions in July. And that isn't, immediate. None of it is unknown. We have had the discussion over multiple months. We knew this was coming last year with the change to
The capital
legislation.
plan, though, many projects are listed, money is available. I mean,
That's why we're having the conversation the 13th.
So you're
Money
gonna-
as available, so we're gonna talk about the
I'm not gonna
availability.
argue tonight. but
Well, and
thank
then
you.
the only exception that I would say, because I agree that most of the capital projects, there's much of the capital project that we will be talking about that we already are aware of. We've been fixed, patch, and repair since I can remember. And now we're getting to a place where maybe we don't have to be there. The exception to me would be anything at the high school above and beyond the sort of necessary, absolutely necessary. Is that not what you all are thinking?
Well, I guess I'm thinking of spending more time talking about, I don't want the projects decided for me and
No, and I understand
and I
that.
not have a chance to filter through those projects because I want to change.
And I don't think
So-
anyone's saying that. I just think that what we're saying is we all know where the needs are. Those are not new.
But I may be jumping the gun, and if I am, I'm apologizing, but, you know, the way the process has gone so far, you know, the RFP went out for Fannin and Howie before, I mean, you guys they
Okay.
were interviewing before we even read what the RFP said.
So rather than
So I just want to make sure,
replay that, let's try to fix the concern. So my question is at what point, and again, I need to kind of get a feel from all of you. Are you disagreeing that we know where most of the capital project, the needs are for the capital project? The only thing that's sort of different to us is that we are interested in doing something more major at the high school. That's a huge, big one, but I'm just saying a lot of these rectifying fixed, patch, and repair, we've been in fixed, patch, and repair for a really long time. So you're saying you don't think we know where all the projects are already?
well, I tell you what, I'm going to answer your question, no, I don't.
Okay.
But it's more because of timing and, you know, and what information we're looking at.
Okay, so-
But if
okay.
I'm being promised that 2 weeks from now, there's no surprises and we got plenty of time, then
Okay.
I'll just
So
stand here and shut
here's
up
the other
until then.
question, though, is what do you say a week's not long enough, and if you say you don't know where all the projects are, that's fine. So what is it that you need, and how far ahead do you need it
I want to
get
I
in the
want to feel like
financial-
I'm part of the discussion about what projects that we're going to do.
Okay.
Over, you know, the capital, we used to have a 10-year capital projects plan.
Right.
And then it went to a 5,
And we've
then
been
a
in
3,
fixed-
and then.
we've been in
and
as we
now-
have money
And now
forever.
what we do is we budget, you know, carpet in the district as needed. I mean, so to sit and say, we know everything. Well, yeah, in a sense, yeah, we know we need to do this roof plan, we know we need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
What we don't know is what comes first, how it's scheduled, to what degree, and
And I
And-
felt like that's part of what we are going to be doing.
Well,
But I want to make sure, I'm sorry, Dixie, I
Oh,
want to
I'm
make
sorry.
sure that when we get to our training, that you have what you need and that you aren't going to feel surprised. So, do you need us to,
I don't know
We-
what you're coming to the training with, I just want to make sure.
well,
Well,
and
this-
I say us, but
I
I'm
don't
just
feel like
saying-
I'm part of the discussion right now.
Okay,
This is what I think, I mean, it would help me.
that's what I'm
If-
looking for.
Because we've seen the stuff, I have seen it, okay, but I need like a packet that has what our 3-year capital projects plan is. I would like to have where we are budget-wise, what's coming off, how much, and all that, so I can kind of start wrapping my head around this. This is stuff we already have. It's just a matter of getting it together in a packet. And then what Fannie Howie presented as possible projects. And what else am I missing?
Well, there's just time for us to have discussions so we understand and we agree on the project list and the financing that's going to go to it.
Yeah, but those kind of things would help me start looking at it.
So how far
So I'm more
before our
prepared.
training would you like these materials sort of recaptured and packaged and resent to you? As soon as possible.
I just want to feel like I'm part of the discussion now. you know, if the data is, if the data hasn't, if the discussions aren't taking place and the decisions being filtered right now, then
You're okay.
I'm jumped the gun.
Okay.
I can tell you that we are not having discussions about that right now. Right now, we're trying to finish the school year, we're trying to finish staffing
Well,
so people know where they're gonna be, we're trying to do schedules.
I can appreciate
We're
that.
trying to get summer school ready, and we're already looking at who do we need to hire, what positions, so that we're set up for next school year. Discussions that are going on about this, they're not taking place. To review the information that you need as board members, as you come in, look at the Fannie Howey report, look at the projects that are listed. To your concern, John, about the CPF and saying, well, we've got it planned, and then roofs, and then if we do it, we don't. We're as frustrated as you guys are with the finances the way they are, but since tax caps went into place and that whole restructure of funding took place, it is what it is.
Yeah,
I mean, we
we've
can be upset with it, and our things are listed, and then it's roofs or carpet as needed, and that's exactly what it means. We know that Dennis may need part of a roof, just simply going by life expectancy, but if we can get away with it for another year, we're getting away with it for another year.
And we've been in that
And
mode
that's,
for,
that's
gosh,
what,
Jeff, how long?
that's what Suzanne keeps referring to, that fix, patch, or repair, literally. It's
Well, like I
almost to the
said-
point where we hear there's an alarm, we drive by, if there's smoke, we keep going. If we come back
Don't
and
say
there's
that. He
flames,
doesn't
then
mean
we
that.
pull off. And I'm
We're
not
talking
talking,
about borrowing several $1 million for major projects,
yes,
and so that's a different story.
it is. And we can be much more
Absolutely.
intentional with that because we know that those funds are dedicated in there as opposed to having a CPF budget that doesn't come close to what on the schedule it looks like we should do.
Yeah.
Kind of like, again, my analogy of going in to get your oil changed, and they say, oh, by the way, you need shocks and struts, and you also need your transmission flushed. Okay, well, change my oil.
Right.
Well,
Would it be great to do the others? Yes, it would.
I appreciate what you're saying. I hope you appreciate what I'm saying.
Absolutely, I
I just
understand where
want
you're
to,
coming
I just don't, you know, what's happened to date, I may be wrong. It's a personal feeling.
Okay.
I
So,
feel like I've been part of the process. I want to feel like I'm part of the process moving forward.
so besides the Fannie Howey, which we can all access because we've all have that, would you like them to send you the current
Well, it sounds like,
existing
it sounds
CPF?
like that we're breaking ground with this on our meeting, so we'll just follow through with that. and-
Okay, all
I
right.
I would like to have that stuff, so I have a starting point.
Yeah, I actually, those are on my list.
Okay.
I'm gonna prepare a packet for all of you because the whole point of this night is so you can learn and discuss. None of it is to tell you or to be any decision-making. It's so that we all feel comfortable as we start making these decisions of what we have to do. And it's not just about projects, it's a lot of timing, it's a lot of money talk.
Of course.
But it all centers around those projects. So that part is new for a lot of you. You have not been through a bond issue before, so it's a little bit overwhelming to even think about what's coming, but it really is an intentional starting point that is going to help that discussion so that we can talk about it and know what we're talking about and what decisions need to be made and when. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that it's going to be a good time where you get to really, get it
With our own
Well,
information.
and then the other piece of that is what's new, what have they
Right.
changed
Exactly.
this time?
Exactly. And the forms were just released yesterday. I haven't even had time to download them and look at them. So there is a number of new things, and some of it might look old but new. Some of it may look completely foreign, and a lot of it looks the same.
Okay.
But it's going to be a work for all of us to try to get to know that.
Well, and it seems to me that at the state level, there has been, in recent years, an enormous amount of changes.
Yes.
That normally didn't occur.
Right. This has only happened maybe one or two other times in schools since schools were established with an auditing agency and a taxation commission. And so this is a big deal. And they've gently released the draft of all of the actual account numbers, and it's very different than what we're used to. So today, Mr. Shunnison has a grant, and because it's a 2-year grant, I have to make sure it follows all the rules that are coming. And it took me about 10 times as long as it usually does to set up a grant. So that's gonna be the process for about a year or two till we all get familiar. So don't be afraid to ask questions at this a day, because what I know is that state change has provided a lot of state support that they are very willing to answer questions to help us get there and get us where we need to be. So, you know, it may be a question I haven't thought of yet.
I feel like we
Don't-
just
right.
sort of, this is what I see happening. We have to sort of refamiliarize ourselves with all the things that have needed to be done for a while. Because we are finally approaching the place where we will have the ability to do some of these things that we haven't been able to do.
And we'll also get our capital projects fund back,
Correct. That's so,
minus some circuit breaker money.
right, so, but it's all sort of converging at a good time, but that's also why it's clearly overwhelming. Because we have to refamiliarize ourselves with the projects, what has been done, what hasn't been done. Most of it hasn't been done, but has been sort of patched. And so, as you said, we're gonna have to, what is seen as the priorities, which we have some of that information. And then a major deal is the high school has gone sort of untouched for such a really long time. Not just the needs, but just in general. And so it's learning those projects, it's timing the other, it's not feeling rushed into something that might be a major one. And so what can we do between now and then without sacrificing our ability to do that, but still get some of this stuff done? So I think we generally have an idea what has to happen, but now I think we're getting into the meat of what comes next. And you probably have as good of an idea of all the projects
That's why I'm
as
scared.
anyone else.
That's why I'm scared.
Well, and I think we all are. I mean, I think it's a different place for us to be. My goodness, how long have we been at that place where we couldn't really do anything but address emergencies, primarily. And so now we're there, and we want to be responsible, and I think that's great. But it's not. Much of it isn't new information. We just have to figure out how to package it correctly. And this training that we're going to get, I think, is what's going to help us know
And
how
we won't
to
beat that
stretch.
horse to death anymore.
Well, but it's
I
so
just wanna
important
make
because
sure.
it is a lot of money, and it's a very important piece. And we put ourselves for at least over a decade into a position to
And it-
be responsible with our taxpayers' dollars, and we want to continue to do that. But
Well,
it's in
I
a
mean,
very different
And when you
place.
read all of it, it just seems like it's, everything is HVAC.
Oh, of
Everything.
course, of course.
And you keep thinking, we should just train our kids how to
Well,
build
becau-
all that. Do all
And these are, it's major too. I mean, this isn't just, sending
No.
the
I mean, it's-
HVAC repair guy in. This is,
No,
I only
it's
have one more
huge.
item, so.
all right, go.
And this is just a request to come back at the next board meeting or the board meeting after that.
Well, the next one's really short because
Yeah,
we're
we
doing the
are doing our
training.
I guess it'd be the one after that then.
Yeah.
John, I'm sorry, John, I won't put you on the spot. He sent out an email to the board talking about questions about the GT programming and where it's at. And the staffing changes that are proposed to take place. And you got early college when the last board meeting, the comment was made that we're going to equalize the staffing amongst the buildings and that kind of stuff. And I appreciate the goal, but I kind of have to have a tendency to agree with, in John's email, he kind of is referencing he thinks that possibly the program or programming may be affected or may change. So I guess, and what I really, really liked, and I'm terrible at this, so this is why I have to put John on the spot, because I really appreciate what he did. Is I'm terrible about going from a beginning to a today and carry a string through. When we start discussion a topic 2 years ago, it's easy with the fires that we have come up every month. it's easy to forget your basis where you went from. And so in John's email, he had went back to the past board briefs, and he had titled all of the actions or the reports on the board briefs about high ability. I'm also talking about early college as well, but his capture was there. So I'm going back to when we had the GT audit. I think that's what it was called. Was it called an audit or a?
From Ball State?
Yeah, from Ball State. Going back to that point, I mean, I think now is the time for us to really start to talk, at least since those two programs seem to be at the forefront right now. Maybe it's time for us to really start talking about those programs and where we are with them, what we want to do with them, where we want to go with them. I know it's all supposed to be part of the master plan process, and I know, certain steps are, and I don't know if the timing is ever right, but I think now would be a good time to bring back that GT audit suggestions and talk about what we want to do, where we want to go. I'm even confused on who's in charge of it. I mean, and actually, it was funny, as I was reading, Mrs. Wolf comes into this a couple different times about going to GT training. So it talks about how the assessment works and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not really wanting to debate it tonight, but what I would really like is some formal process to start, something to come back to the board and say, okay, this is our goal, this is what we want to do, this is the direction. Because I'm not sure how, as I was reading through the board briefs, it makes me wonder, I must have slept when I read them in the past, because it talks about somewhere through the process that how we identify them changed. And I don't even remember us discussing that. So
it was important.
So
Necessary.
I can remember, it talks about the broad-based planning committee and being created. There's a couple different times where the director has asked for board participation, and so, when the committee meets, who is the committee? What's involved? What's the direction, the goal of the committee? I guess I just want to be completely brought up to speed on where we're at, what we want to do, and what's our next step.
This is the program you're talking about that's at Hibbert School, right?
Right. Well, I'm talking about both of the programs, not just high ability, but.
You don't want the gift and tell, okay. Okay.
But I think, John brought up a point that we're losing 2 staff members, and that's going to drastically affect both of the programs based on, but I think that's why we need to talk.
Okay.
And part of the master planning process, the recommendation that I brought as we discussed that night was evaluate the grade configurations and course offerings, and then also in the first year, 1 to 3 years, was the programming projects based on the decisions regarding master planning. So one of the things that we'll be bringing to you yet this summer, along with everything that goes with the bonds and with the construction projects, will be the plans of how are we going to go forth and roll this out. And what is board participation going to look like? What do you want it to look like on those different teams or groups that are looking? I don't want to call them committees, because then we get into expectations with the
I'm
teachers'
sorry,
unions.
You lost me. Can you back up a little bit? I mean.
How far back would you like me? So part of the master planning process.
Yeah, okay, you said part of the master planning process, but, so are you talking about just the program at Hibbert or all programs?
I'm talking about across the board,
Evaluating programs.
evaluating our programs, looking at grade configurations, looking at course offerings at the middle school, looking at our programs that we have at Hibbert, both early college and logos, looking at all of that as we move forward. What are the different things that we need to do to have so at the end of next year we are set with where we need to go? And that means getting from all of you, what's your timeline, what's your comfort level, when do those decisions need to be made, so that it's not coming towards the end of the school year when we're saying, hey, we're going to change grade configurations, or we're not changing grade
And
configurations.
so that programming can still be driving capital.
Yes,
But but that's, you're talking about the end of next year.
I am.
But from the way I understand it, we're making substantial changes in the programming this year.
Staff.
I think substantial only in the fact of not offering Spanish any longer as an exploratory course for a half a semester a year for students. Otherwise, we're able to do what we need to do by refining the program, how it is utilized each and every day. Not that it's majorly changing the program itself. But what we are doing is just like we've done in every other building across our district, and that is, how do we continue to refine and repurpose what we're doing to make it fit within the resources that we have available to us. It's not about destroying a program, it's not about taking a program apart, it's not about changing it, it's about simply meeting the needs of the program within the resources that we have.
Well, I've always spoke bluntly, and to put it out there, perception right now in the community between parents and staff and everybody out there is that the Logos program and early college is on the chopping block, and that we're looking at getting rid of them. And you know, the parents are really concerned. I've heard from a ton of parents about it. A lot of parents, the only reason they're still in Richmond Community Schools is for the distinct difference of the Logos program and the early college program. Lady spoke tonight about had kids at Northeastern and had one back in here for the early college program. You know, my fear is we started off this meeting tonight talking about the career programs, the biomed, doing all the celebrations, which we don't get enough credit for. We have hands down, by far, more programs and opportunities than any other school system in the area. But the problem is that it's all overshadowed by controversial stuff and negative stuff. Going back to...
Sorry, all overshadowed, I'm having a problem with that. I don't believe it's all overshadowed by that. I think that is a very broad, sweeping statement.
It gives the appearance.
That's your opinion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Going back to what was mentioned a few minutes ago, I have a little bit of a problem too with the way a couple things were done. We've talked about the redistricting. I would have loved to have had public comment or some discussion about it before it was done. And I felt that was kind of not handled correctly, but it is what it is. But we voted on the program changes at Hibbard and everything, and
well, we actually
No,
did
programming
vote on
changes.
well, okay, I'm sorry, I misspoke. We talked about realigning with the other middle schools.
Yes.
I would have loved to have seen a little more broader explanation of what was going on there, or at least thought process of how it was going. I don't want to get too into the weeds, okay? I get that. That's your job. That's why we hire you. But I would like to have also seen maybe end goal of where you're at before that's brought to a motion. Does that make sense?
And it's not, it isn't brought to a motion, just like as I described in the email, when we made changes of foreign language offerings at the high school, or when we decided to increase offering Project Lead the Way at the middle schools, or because of financing and budgetary issues with Title I, we reduced the coaches and at the elementary levels. All of that is things that take place as we go through the staffing process each and every year. So it wasn't, the end game was simply to continue to be able, as I've said throughout the master planning process, we have got to figure out how do we continue to offer all the programs that we're currently offering, the great ones that we talked about today, but also the Logos, the early college programs that we're offering at the intermediate levels as well. How do we continue to be able to do all of that and function with lower students, with fewer dollars because of all of that, yet figure out how do we do it? Because if we keep doing it the same way, it's not going to work. And up till now, that's been great. We were able to give teachers the largest raise we've been able to give last fall, and that was because of this similar type of action that we've already taken at the elementary, at the intermediate, and at the high school, and CYS as well. So when we're doing all of that, and I guess that's where I don't understand the expectations, because that part hasn't been there before now. And so now, because it's in that building, is that the reason? And that's what we need to know. Because up till now, last fall, it was great that we were in this position where we had been very resourceful with our resources, where we had been able to come up with the extra dollars to be able to, not just our teachers, but every employee that works for our school district, to be able to give them that. So, and again, I know everybody out there thinks people look at what happens in Muncie and what's happening there. We have to do everything that we can to put ourselves in a position, as we have a continually growing at-risk population, that we can continue to do everything. And we do an amazing job with that. As Karen has mentioned before to you in board updates and here at this table, to have a positive cash balance in every taxing fund. That's unheard of for a district similar to
I don't think that's
ours.
what we're questioning. That's not what I'm questioning. I think, I support Project Lead the Way. I support the Biomed. These are all programs that I support that I think wholeheartedly help Richmond Community Schools. I also feel that way about early college and logos.
As do I.
So if you were coming to me, I mean, you can transplant any of these programs into my comment about what is our plan, what is our future, what is our, I said logos in early college. It could be Project Lead the Way, it could be any of those. I value all of those programs. If you come to me and said that we're going to take 2 staff members away, eliminate a program, and do this at Project Lead the Way, I'd have the same question and the same concern.
Then maybe, so maybe you didn't realize that we did reduce staff at the high school. For instance, last year, we reduced, I don't know off the top of my head, 4 or 5 positions at the high school.
I'm really not, I don't want to turn this into an argument with you on.
It's not an argument, I think it's information.
What I'm trying to request in an appropriate way as a board is for us to bring what is the goal of the administration for that program to the table so we can discuss it. I'm not worried about a half FTE or this. I'm worried about what's our goal, what's our project, what do we want early college to look like, what do we want logos to look like, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to sit there and split hairs on.
Probably should use vision.
And I think to answer that, though, I think that it's important to know that I am concerned about half an FTE, because I have to be.
Well.
So, but
that's not what I'm talking. But I'm not talking about splitting half of the FTE right now.
Is how do we use our resources so we can continue to offer the program and have the program still be valid in what it is doing, with maybe we have to give up this in order to do that for the overall good of the building.
And I understand that, but then at this point, I think, well, as a board, then maybe I may not want to give that up. Maybe as an individual, I may want to say, well, we need to find that half FTE, to use your words, somewhere else.
But is that really our?
So, well, I think I don't know, we haven't discussed the program and the goal for the program.
Hibbard recommendation was based on staffing and based on, we're told, student performance. And what we're ended up doing is we're pulling foreign language out of both of those programs. That was a key component of those programs. And I guess I see that as a program change. And I think it's a board decision decided maybe we should be expanding foreign language in the middle schools rather than pulling it out of the one school that has it. And so when I'm sold, I mean, we're going from 3 labs or 5 labs to, I guess, 3 now, which I think will have significant impact on the program. But to simply say we're giving Spanish or French an advantage because they had that in middle school, I think is a disservice. I mean, Logos, foreign language, was a key component of that program since the beginning. Early college, they had Chinese, Logos had French. To to somewhat submit to the administration, they both went to Spanish 2 years ago, and now neither program will have foreign language. That's a programming change, that's not a staffing change. And just because the Spanish teacher resigned, now we're gonna change the programs, I don't quite see that logic.
Well, I think the other thing you have to look at is if you're offering a foreign language, why are you offering it? What language is going to help our kids succeed in a global society? And sometimes I think we've been off track with some languages, but there's also, if you get creative, there are ways that kids could take language. There's some good programs via computer that are pretty exceptional now. They're not like they used to be. So there are ways for them to do it, but the staff would have to be creative in the way they go about
See,
it.
I saw it as alignment of resources is one thing, which we do every year, and we have to do every year to keep going the way we're going. That's one thing. And then future going, it's been on our agenda to examine our programs and evaluate our programs, period. So while I get what you're saying, that there is an impact to the program when you align resources, I would say that's true in every building. So whenever you align resources, there's some impact there. I would also argue that at the time when there is a resignation is the time that you do that. I think every business does that, and I know people don't feel very comfortable talking about education and business in the same game, but I'm just saying, in most places, when you have a resignation.
That makes no sense. I mean, if I have a company and a key employee resigns, I replace that employee.
Not all the time.
Well, maybe that employee, well, then why did I have the employee in the first place?
You take advantage of the opportunity to see if that's what you want to do. At least that's what's always happened. You take that opportunity to see if your resources are aligned appropriately when that happens. You don't like it that it happens, but when that happens, you look and say, okay, do I want that same position? Do I want to alter that position? Do I want to split it into 2 halves? Do I need it to, that happens all the time.
I think that's why
disagree.
I'm not trying to argue about the positions. I'm trying to argue, that's why I'm trying to see the goals of the program,
Right, and I think
what we
that's
want to
the
do.
next step, and I think that's the next step for all our programs, as I saw it in the master plan, is because we've talked about that a lot. We're like, how and when do we evaluate our programs to know that we have the right ones? How and when do we systemically have an evaluation process or going forward for all of our programs? Just because they make us feel good doesn't mean they're the right ones, and I'm saying that about all of our programs. But in the interim, we had been pursuing, we love Project Lead the Way, and I think in the middle of this, we're going to get to add Project Lead the Way into Hibbert. Am I right about that? So I get it. Like I get the concern, but I also understand that at some point in time we have to realign. We realign resources every year.
Well, and I understand, that's why I just would like it brought back within the second board meeting, because I want to talk about programs, not
Right.
resources right now.
Right, but just that one or all?
Well, that's the one, I mean, we were going to be status quo for the next year.
Correct.
That's true everywhere else except for the Hibbert building between early college and Logos.
I wouldn't say that's exactly true. We've aligned resources other places too.
Well, but the status quo was no program changing, no
Oh, I
grade
get you.
configuration.
And because we didn't replace
no-
the Spanish, that's a program
and-
change.
Yeah, so,
I get what you're saying.
so now,
But so is adding a Project Lead the Way. That's a program change too, right?
well, and Project Lead the Way, I don't know, I had one person tell me Project Lead the Way was only going to be for early college, not for Logos. I don't know, because we've not had that discussion.
Yeah. Well, let me offer this up to you then, because obviously, we need to move forward with staffing for next school year. But we need to spend the time to do it right with the program evaluation of all of our programs, every program that we're looking at across the board. So if the board would like, we can go ahead and continue and try to replace that Spanish position for this coming year at Hibbert. And then we can just continue to use that as part of the evaluation program as we go through next school year.
Again, I'm not arguing FTE so
I understand.
much as the fact that
And let's take that part out of it then. Let's just talk about the fact of what we just mentioned, of evaluating programs and taking the time to do that. If that's what we want to do, if that's what you would like for us to do and move forward with it, by all means, we can do that.
But can I say that?
Put the Spanish back, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Can I say that, I understand the logos and the early college and stuff, but Richmond Community Schools is way bigger than just those two programs. And I don't want us to forget about the rest of the other kids in the programs. And it seems like if we focus on just those two things and getting back to that and doing that, what about the rest of them? What if I got a kid that may not excel in anything, but foreign language is his thing, and he's at Dennis Middle School, or he's at Vail, or he's someplace else? Is that fair?
well, that's why I was talking about you. It just happens to be those two programs now because they're affected. That's why I was talking about it's not that I don't support all these other programs as well. I'm not trying to make it
But program
logos again.
evaluation is important to you.
Yeah,
But it needs to
it
be
is to me, too.
everything, and not just solely focused on two programs.
Right.
So Debbie, to speak to your concern there as well, that's another thing that, one of the things we're going to be looking at as we go through this is the offerings at the middle school, the intermediate level as well. Course offerings is one of the things that came out loud and clear as we had our community meetings. And so we can stay status quo with Spanish for the next year, but then also use this coming year to make that decision and decide, well, if Spanish is important enough at Logos and early college, why isn't it important enough to put into Test and Dennis as well? And and I think that's a valid argument.
That's all
Not
I've ever
argument,
asked for.
concern.
Is to have a year to plan rather than 3 weeks to plan.
Well, but here's
So
the other,
if adding Spanish programs gives us that year, so we know in December what Logos and early college and CYS and Career Center all look like at the start of the following year, I'm a much happier.
because your argument is that this removal of Spanish is the real, the other part is alignment of resources. You're saying removing Spanish is a programmatic change.
Yes.
And so, and I understand where you're coming from, John, I do. Then we can look at it and say, well, okay, so if we feel like foreign language is crucial, then let's make it so it's not just an exploratory, but where they can earn credit for it as they go into high school, so
Well,
then they
that's
can
the
free
other-
up
see,
more
that's
time
the-
for early college.
That's the other, that's the other impact,
But-
because with the honors degree, you gotta have 3 years, and it's nice to have one out of your.
But, and will it
Well,
count?
which used to be the case at the middle schools.
Will it count?
It did. But the one thing I wanna get out there is just what all of you are gonna have to keep in mind is as we move forward through this process and we evaluate programs and we know that offering foreign language at all of the intermediate buildings would be fabulous for credit, for high school. That'd be awesome. We also have to keep in mind
Comes with a cost.
it comes with a cost. And so, if this comes on, what are we looking at coming off? And that's okay. That's what we don't do a real good job at a lot of times in education is we want to add and add and add, and we have to look at, well, what do we prune away as
But
well
also-
as a changing
But
society?
also look at other creative ways to do it.
Absolutely.
Because there
And
are
I think
ways.
we've done a really good job. You look at the RGA that we offer, you look at the way that we're reaching kids through online courses. There's a lot of really creative things, and that is just setting the basis for us as we look forward to the future and what we do there.
If adding the Spanish back at Hibbert gets us through, like John said, then okay, then maybe in 2 weeks we don't have to have it back. But I still don't want to lose sight of the fact that following through with this process and who this committee is and the broad-based planning as I read through this, I'm not so sure as a school corporation we ever really took ownership. Now, again,
Of that audit, you mean?
the results of that audit, the building itself with the 2 programs that are offered there is definitely a highlight to our district for the community. I mean, it attracts parents, it attracts, that's what we want. That's, not only do we want to educate our kids to the best of their ability, that's why we got Project Lead the Way, that's why we got, biomed. Those are the reasons. I would just like to be purposeful. And see, I was trying not to debate this tonight. I was trying to say, bring this back.
But we don't have time to not debate it tonight. And as you said,
Yeah, that's right, because
when there's a lot of
staffing's gotta
communication that
happen.
takes place through email, unfortunately, there's only so many times that we're all able to get together and have these conversations, and we need to have these conversations.
That's true.
I mean, if we can add back Spanish, and then next year, if we have a better model that doesn't include a foreign language, I have no problem with that, as long as there's been sufficient time, people have included, and the plan has been well developed and thought out.
Well, because we.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
I am
Yeah.
comfortable with that.
We definitely have to get to the place, though, when we are evaluating our programs, that we have data to back it up, and that we're not going on because it feels good, and it looks good, and it's perceived as good. And so that's where I don't know that we've ever quite gotten there for all of our programs.
Are we talking about adding Spanish back for next year?
Correct.
Hasn't been gone long.
I understand that. I just,
It's only been gone a week.
Because it
I
would
just
be
feel
a
like-
change to their program, which they,
but we're gonna
We're
talk about
expecting.
programming on the 13th, right? That's part of some of the stuff we're gonna do, right?
No.
No.
no, not really.
The
That's just
13th is
a
about financing, is
Okay.
about bonds, is about building.
Capital projects.
Projects that we're gonna do, moving forward with that.
Oh, Lord.
This
Why are we
part,
gonna change programming this year when that's a big key essential part of the master planning process that we're getting into?
the big, as he said, the big part of programming should take place through the master planning process, which
Okay.
the beef of that has gotta happen first semester.
Okay.
So then, second
Okay.
semester, we're ready to put
Okay.
into place the
Okay.
things that we decide first semester.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can't talk
And that,
about.
and that, just as a little preview of what that's gonna look like for all of you, as we develop the different groups to look at these things, for instance, to look at grade configurations, to look at course offerings, to look at GT, to look at early college, we'll ask for you guys to be a part of those groups so that you can be a board representative and bring the information back to the board. I think we have to be real careful saying those are gonna be committees because of the legal ramifications that come along with those, with public meetings and who all
Well,
is there. so-
They're not gonna be board committees. They're gonna be superintendent committees.
And they're not gonna be committees, they're gonna be groups, yeah, to.
Study
review.
groups or
Study
whatever,
groups,
yeah.
yes. So, if we avoid that whole committee, we, not only just for board or superintendent, but also union or teacher or, so it's just better for us to steer clear of that just for clarity. Okay?
All right.
Thank you
I'm
all.
done. I
Thank
don't
you
have
all.
Is that it?
Appreciate it, Jeff, and all of you, so. All right, we have to get back to our agenda, my goodness. Okay, we are at
What commentary? Anyone?
Our second, yes, Kenny
Okay.
Turkleson.
Okay.
I had a couple of things that I wanted to address. Because Alexis is so highly functional, even though she has Down syndrome, a few things that disturb me about this school-based, any kind of school-based counseling is that we may have to get a specialist for her. She operates on a very high level, and you show her something once, and she can do it. She runs all the electronics in the house, TVs, controllers, everything. I got her a new controller. I said, this is the button you press. I said, go do it now. And she memorizes things. She memorizes dances. She remembers lyrics to songs. She sees something once, and she memorizes it. She remembers it. How are we going to get these thoughts out of her head? It's going to be a long process, and it's probably going to be a specialist that's going to need to get involved, not just school-based counseling. I'm wondering, who's going to pay for this cost of this? So, do I find a lawyer to help us through this process? Does the school have anything beyond that they can specialize in, somebody like her? So that's my only worry is that, I may have to get a lawyer, and I may have to, because somebody's going to have to pay for, I believe, specialized counseling, because the more I think about it, you can't just put her in a room with somebody and talk to her. And she's not going to respond to everybody either. she talks about, and everybody, I was able to ask her within a few minutes who showed her about that stuff. Now, I don't know the details of how it was shown, but I mean, not only was she doing it with the dolls, but she was doing it to herself with a doll. So who showed her that? And so these are things that stick in her head. Today I caught her playing with the dolls again. I mean, it's a cycle with her. We need to break that cycle, and we may need a specialist. So I'm just wondering, what's going to happen with that? Who's gonna take up the slack? Because her older sister Grace, when we moved here, started cutting. She's been in the hospital twice. It cost me a fortune for her to come out of this. And now we've got somewhat, she's progressed and she's up at the Excel Center because she can't deal with all of this stuff that goes on at the high school. And she tried RGA, and they went, last year she had a hard time keeping up, and this year they just blew right over her. They were so accelerated, and she couldn't get the help that she needed, even going to the lab. And she gave up, says, I'm out of school. And I said, no, we have to be. And one of her counselors suggested the Excel Center, and she's phenomenal, a phenomenal student. She's a phenomenal person, but she has disorders. Because of a lot of it from before, when she had problems of being molested, and her dad, and just the way she was brought up, and the way things happened to her. And, it all came together, and we moved out here, and everything just, So I'm wondering about Alexis. You have a program that's going to be solid enough to do this? I don't believe so. From what I've heard, we were discussing out in Indianapolis, they have specialists that deal with these special needs kids and this kind of trauma. We don't have any physical evidence, but I had to erase a dozen of these things off of her tablet because she still uses her tablet. If I was smart enough, I would have taken them off and put them on my computer to show a therapist later. But I mean, you just describe it, and it's, and you could probably get her to do that in front of a therapist. But so that's, there's going to be a cost. There's going to have to be a specialist involved, and so who's going to pay for that? Because I've already spent a fortune, and I can't keep up with that. And now I have a special needs child that's going to need special guidance. So we need to think about that too. I don't know, get back to me on something like that, but we're going to look into it because I don't believe that that's going to be enough for her. This kid's too smart, and she remembers everything. She remembers stuff from years ago, and all of a sudden we'll bring it up. And like, where did that come from? Where did you think about that? It's something that you did when I first met her. She would do certain things or have certain things that she did or certain songs, and it's like, hadn't heard it for years, and I've been with her for 8 years. All of a sudden, boom, comes out of nowhere. So this is going to stick in her head because it's burned in there. So.
We've come to our time limit. Thank you.
Okay, but that's, maybe we can do something with that. Thank you anyway for everything.
Anyone else, Kim?
No. Good. All right. Preview of upcoming meeting and events.
So we have a lot of things coming up that I want to fill you in on. Tomorrow evening, we will have an open house at all of our elementary buildings for those families who were impacted by the boundary changes, and we look forward, principals will be there to greet them and meet them, show them around the schools, so we look forward to a good evening there. Tuesday, we look forward to even more, and that is the last day of school. And I know many of our kids are looking forward to that greatly, and Wednesday is the last day for teachers. And then it's not long, though, because June 4th, the high school reports for summer school, as well as third grade academy. And then June 11th is when our elementary and middle school students report for summer school. And this year we've increased the number of students participating in summer school at the elementary and middle school level by over 100 students, so we're really excited about that opportunity for our kids. And then final one I want to bring to your attention, and I hope all of you have plans to attend June 10th, graduation, Sunday afternoon, and should be a great ceremony as well.
It's when we get reminded why we do all this.
That's right.
So it's a very good thing to be at graduation.
It is.
Okay, have reached the opportunity for our press conference. Do you have any questions? We only have one, so, okay. And how about our bell ringer?
Our bell ringer this evening, I want to recognize and talk a little bit about the adult ed graduation that we had last night, and I am going to defer to Dixie. She was our guest speaker there. Her heart has been in adult ed and alternative ed for years and years. Dixie, anything you'd like to say about that awesome ceremony last night?
I just want to say that last night, and I've been there every year for years, and last night I heard 3 of the most awesome speakers I have ever heard. I mean, it was, one had, crowd was standing, about the hardships that they came through, the struggles that they've had, which have been many, the reasons why they couldn't make it to high school or had to drop out of high school, and the reasons they come back, and the opportunities that having a GED is going to provide for them now. And many of them are looking forward to continued success. You could tell with a great deal of pride. They had a great deal of pride in earning that GED and being able to look at their family and say, I did make it, and to be able to encourage the rest of their family to continue in school. So it's always very heartwarming, tear-jerking. Those kids really, really earn their diploma. And so I thought it was a great ceremony, as it always is.
And Dixie did a great job with her speech as well, and Dixie, we appreciate your speaking last night.
That being said, we are